What's going on, everyone? It's Evan here, and it looks like we might maybe be seeing the end of game key cards. It's a little early to tell, but a new report might be shedding some light on what Nintendo's plans for the format is going into the future. And before I get into this new report, if you guys enjoy Nintendo Switch speculation, news, collecting, and just general gaming variety stuff, hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. So we're getting this new report in from Nintendo Soup, and they're looking at a fiscal update report released by Micronix, which is the company that makes the actual cards for Nintendo Switch games. Cards, cartridges, however you want to put it, it's all the same thing. Put them in your system and there's a game on them. Well, at least that's how it used to work. So in their fiscal update, Micronix revealed that its ROM products are being used primarily in Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch game cartridges, and they've also announced new ways to use both in-house and outsourced technologies to produce, quote, cartridges in the future depending on capacity requirements. And so take note of that capacity requirements mentioned there, because that's the most important part here. Nintendo Switch 1 games have a variety of game capacities, from like 2 gigabytes all the way up to 32 gigabyte cartridges. But the Switch 2, there's only one for what we know, and that's a 64 gigabyte card. If developers don't want to shell out what we think is about $15 to use that 64 gigabyte card, they have really no other choice but to use a game key or a code in box. That's why we've seen so many third-party releases go the game key option. Only a select few, CD Projekt Red with Cyberpunk is probably the most famous. Marvelous is doing it with Rune Factory and Daemon X Machina. We've also seen the new Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection is going to be complete on cartridge, which is very surprising, but great. I gotta support that. I probably wasn't gonna buy that game until I saw that. Anyway, from this report, Micronix said they're gonna use this MLC NAND, which is their internal technology, and this outsourced 3D NAND to produce cartridges of varying capacity requirements. So it's possible, and now this is all just speculation here, that they could be working on lower capacity cartridges for Switch 2, which would be lower cost and thus would encourage more third parties to go the actual complete on cartridge route. And as it stands right now, we are not seeing a lot of third parties do that. We just came off of the Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase, where we had a whole bunch of announcements, and pretty much all of them were announced to be game key cards on Switch 2, which is really frustrating because they have full releases on Switch 1. Like, look at Pac-Man World 2 Repack. I'm really excited for that game, and if I wasn't probably planning to get 2 copies of the game because me and my fiance both want it a lot, I probably would just get the Switch 1 version. But since I have an excuse to get 2, I'll probably just get a Switch 2 key and a Switch 1 cartridge and hope that there's some sort of upgrade for that Switch 1 version. Just to give you kind of an idea of the game key situation as a whole, shout out to Physical Releases on Twitter for these images, but you can see there's just a handful of games that are actually complete on cart for Switch 2. Here's literally all of them. Most of them are from Nintendo. Again, one from CD Projekt, more from Marvelous. But here is the giant wall of Switch 2 game key cards. This is just a very sad image to look at. Unfortunately, it kind of puts us in a bind, especially because now a lot of companies like Square Enix, for example, are not offering upgrade paths. So if you do want to play these games on your brand new $500 console you just shelled out for, you're kind of stuck at this game key card. On one hand, yeah, you could buy the Switch 1 version, but we're kind of trapped if you want to play games on Switch 2, which I know a lot of people do. Brand new system, new technology, and just a very anti-consumer practice. But if you do want to make your voice heard about game keys, now is a perfect time to do it, and everybody needs to get out and do this new survey that Nintendo has out right now. You can find it. I'll put a link to it in the description. But it pretty much asks you what consoles you have in your house and if you're more willing to buy digitally or physically for those consoles. I filled this out myself, and I was truthful that there are some instances I will buy digital games, but I put strongly prefer on pretty much every option for physical games because I'm a collector. This is what I want. I want my games to be plug and play on the go. There's not always going to be times where I have an internet connection, and there's not always going to be times where the games are installed on my console. So that kind of just leaves you in a situation where I can't play some of these game keys. And, you know, just on principle, like, who wants an empty game cartridge? Like, this is not ownership. This is buying a license that just so happens to be cartridge shaped. Thankfully, it looks like Nintendo is learning, and hopefully this is just kind of them making steps to ensure that they can phase out game keys along the way. It's still very early in the Switch 2's life. We saw the early releases on the Switch 1, like LA Noire and Wolfenstein 2. Those ones needed big downloads. Obviously, the Switch 1, we didn't see the download required cartridges ever go away, but I feel like as time went on, there was less and less of them. But this is definitely something that Nintendo is aware of. They know about this backlash. In June, during their annual shareholders meeting, one of the shareholders actually called out Nintendo's president to his face. He said game key cards were a quote half-baked measure, and Nintendo's president, he basically said, well, we worked with third parties to create these. They were in the loop about that. But ever since then, we have seen reports that Switch 2 sales were not very good for third parties. Actually, the quote was worse than our lowest expectations, or something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing here. But the only game that sold really, really well was Cyberpunk, which is a complete on cartridge game. So the message is out there. Let's see how they respond. And with all of that, that's pretty much everything I have for this video. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think this report is signaling a shift in Nintendo's game key card strategy, or is this just some hopeful extrapolation and you think we're going to be strapped with these things for the near future? Let me know down below. Give me your opinion. And I also want to know, do you guys own any game keys? Are you actively avoiding them? Personally, I own a few, but I'm not happy about it. There's just a couple games I do really want to play, and they're Switch 2 exclusive, like Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. Like, I want to play that game. I don't really want to go back to the old version on PS4, so I do have that game key card. Not happy about it, but it was a launch day purchase, so yeah. Anyway, with that, guys, my name is Evan. Again, if you enjoyed the video, I really would appreciate if you hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.